Nvidia is the most valuable company on earth, and it did not get there by selling chips. It got there by selling something far stranger and far harder to compete with: permission. Permission to even be in the room where the future is being built. Look at almost any headline and you'll be told the same simple story. Nvidia makes the chips that run artificial intelligence. The chips are in short supply, and so the company is worth a fortune. That story is not wrong. It's just shallow. The real machine underneath is far more interesting, and by the end of this, you'll never look at that headline the same way again. So start at the bottom. A few years ago, Nvidia is barely a rounding error next to Apple, next to Microsoft, next to an oil giant like Saudi Aramco. It makes graphics cards mostly for video games. Then the orders for its chips begin to climb, and in the space of just a few years it passes all of them, one by one, crossing $4 trillion until the single most valuable company on the planet is the one that makes the machines everyone else needs. So how does a company that made cards for gamers end up sitting on top of the entire economy? To see it, you have to stop looking at the chip and start looking at the line of people waiting to buy one. Around 2023, something snaps. Every company that wants to build artificial intelligence discovers it needs the exact same thing: enormous amounts of specialized computing power. A single frontier model can swallow tens of thousands of these chips, running for months, just to be trained once. And almost all of it runs fastest on one company's hardware. Demand doesn't rise politely, it goes vertical. Overnight, the whole industry is trying to buy from the same store. And here's the quiet pivot the headlines miss. When demand explodes but supply stays fixed, a strange new power appears out of nowhere. Because if there isn't enough to go around, somebody has to decide who gets it first. Somebody has to choose. And that somebody is Nvidia, not by a vote, not by some rule, simply because it is the one that makes the machine. This is the first hidden mechanism. When everyone needs the one thing only you can make, you don't really sell it anymore. You allocate it. You decide who gets to move fast and who has to wait. And allocation, it turns out, is a quieter and far deeper kind of power than price. Think of the one nightclub everyone wants into. The bouncer doesn't own the building, but for one night he owns the only thing that matters: the door. Look at the gap. The orders pile up far faster than any factory on earth can fill them, and in that gap between what people demand and what actually exists, a line forms. A waiting list for the most important machine of the decade. Whoever controls the front of that line controls who gets to build the future first. At the peak, the wait stretched toward a year, and a chip you can technically buy for $30,000 becomes worth far more than that if you are simply allowed to buy it now instead of 12 months from now. Resellers flipped the cards at double the sticker price. Cloud providers built entire ad campaigns around 3 words: "We have them." The scarcity wasn't a bug in the business. The scarcity was the business. So who gets served first? The giant cloud providers who buy by the hundreds of thousands, then the favored startups, often the ones Nvidia has chosen to back, and then everyone else who waits and watches and hopes their allocation quietly comes through. Being allowed to buy became its own competitive advantage. That is what permission looks like in practice. Now, if this were the whole story, it would be fragile, because scarcity always ends. Factories get built, rivals show up, shortages turn into gluts. It has happened in every boom we have ever lived through. If a waiting list were Nvidia's only moat, the moat would drain the moment the world caught up. So the truly clever move is the one almost nobody talks about. Back in 2006, almost 20 years ago, long before anyone was saying the words artificial intelligence at dinner, Nvidia did something that looked, at the time, almost pointless. It gave its chips a language, a way for ordinary programmers to harness all that raw power for normal work. They called it CUDA. At the time, Wall Street saw it as a waste of money. Why teach a graphics card to do serious math that no video game would ever ask for? And yet that decision, not the silicon, is the real moat. Here's how it closes, and it closes gently. A generation of researchers learns to build on CUDA because it's there and it works. They write their tools on top of it, universities teach it, years of code, libraries, and habits quietly pile up, and almost none of it runs properly anywhere else. So one day you realize that leaving Nvidia doesn't just mean buying a different chip, it means rewriting almost everything. The cost of switching became the cage, and this is the part competitors find so maddening. The number of developers building on top of CUDA has grown into the millions. A competitor can copy the chip. With enough money and time, they can even beat it on paper. What they cannot copy is almost 20 years of everyone else's software written for someone else's platform. Every student trained on CUDA becomes, in effect, a salesperson for the next 10 years of Nvidia hardware. You're not competing with a product. You're competing with a habit the whole industry already has. So now you can see the real product. When a company hands Nvidia billions of dollars, it isn't really buying a piece of hardware. It's buying a ticket into the only ecosystem that already works at scale. It's buying permission to compete in artificial intelligence at all. The chip is just the part you can hold. And when you own the only gate that matters, you get to set the price of the toll. This is where the power becomes visible in the numbers, in a way that is almost difficult to believe for a company that sells physical hardware. On its data center business, Nvidia's gross margin has run near 75%. For every dollar of those chips it sells, around 75 cents is gross profit. Companies that merely sell hardware do not get to keep numbers like that. Companies that sell permission do. The margin is the toll, and the toll is enormous, and it feeds itself. More chips sold means more developers building on CUDA. More developers means more software that only runs well on Nvidia. More software means the next buyer has even less choice. Every turn of the wheel makes the gate taller and the toll easier to charge. Quietly, the door just keeps getting heavier. This is a flywheel, and right now, Nvidia is the only one spinning it at full speed. But here's the part nobody mentions, the second order effect. A gate this profitable doesn't just make Nvidia rich, it makes every single one of its biggest customers desperate to escape it. When you're paying a toll that large every quarter, building your own road starts to look like the smartest investment you could ever make. And the math is brutal. If your AI bill runs into the billions every year, even a chip half as good is worth building the moment you own it outright. So watch what the customers are quietly doing. Google has built its own AI chip, the TPU, for years. Amazon and Microsoft are designing their own silicon to cut the cord. And even OpenAI, Nvidia's most famous customer, has moved to build chips of its own. The people paying the toll are trying to become the people who build the road, and that is the deep tension underneath Nvidia's crown. Every toll booth in history, no matter how dominant, eventually inspires someone to build a road around it. It took Google years and billions to build a real alternative for itself alone. But it built one, and it is no longer the only one trying. So the question was never whether Nvidia could sell chips, it's whether it can keep selling permission once everyone it sells to is busy building their own gate. Because Nvidia's real genius was seeing this years before anyone else. It understood that in a gold rush, you don't get rich digging. You get rich owning the one road everyone has to travel and deciding who's allowed on it. So here's where I'll leave it. The chip was never really the point. The permission was. And once you see that move, you start noticing it everywhere. Whoever quietly controls the bottleneck controls the whole game, long after everyone else has stopped looking. Nvidia just plays that game better than anyone alive right now. Whether it can hold that door for another 10 years while its own customers hammer at the walls is the real trillion-dollar question. So I'll hand it to you. When you look at the tech you use, where's the hidden gate and who's quietly standing at it? Tell me what you see down in the comments.